All right, everybody. As promised, I've got David DuByne on with us from his YouTube channel, which is Adapt 2030. David, how you doing today?
All right, great. I'm so grateful for being on today. Thanks for letting me share my ideas, my knowledge, and so many things are changing in the world right now. And I really believe it's related to what you talk about with the political end of it. And I see more of the climate change, weather end of it. And I thought, at the end of the road, we'd come to the same conclusion. So, yeah, we're going to have a great talk tonight, I do believe.
It's no question. You got two different channels coming at things from completely different angles. And the fact that we continue to end up at the exact same spot really should be as if in our independent areas that we study, there shouldn't be warning signs big enough for people to see. But with two, and just so people understand a little bit about what you do, why don't you give them a little bit of your background?
Well, I started going down to Myanmar in 2012, and I was buying Arabica coffee beans out of the Shan State, Central Shan State, Southern Shan State in the Yunnan area, and around Pinolu in that area in Central Shan. Well, there was a lot of cold damage from the coffee plantations up there. So at that time, I really didn't know what was going on. I just kind of looked at it and why were they losing 13, 14% of new plantings in the fields every year if we were supposed to be going into a warming state. And it just really didn't make sense to me why there was so much frost and freeze damage down there. And that is an incredibly tropical country right near the equatorial band on the planet. So I just started to do the research, and whoa, did what I came up with just shook me, and I studied it for several years before I even started this YouTube channel that I got into. But I thought after a while, I need to start sharing some of this information and see if there's others out there that have some of the same knowledge so we can start to share it together and learn from each other.
You're saying that this fiction that's been peddled to us about global warming isn't entirely true then? Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so.
It ain't so. But it is. If you knew cycles were coming, how would you explain it to people? If you knew something was going to happen in the world's climate in advance and you were trying to set, I wouldn't say a conspiracy so much, but if you knew the cycles were coming again and again, and these cycles are on a regular 400-year pattern, if you knew the next one was going to come right now on our societal development, and you knew there would be gargantuan changes, drastic changes in the weather that everybody on this planet would notice, there's not one place that's not noticing strange weather. If you had enough advanced time, how would you set it up so they wouldn't panic? That's my question back to you.
I don't have an answer to it for you because that's, as you know, and just so your viewers know who I am a little bit. I am an attorney. I don't currently practice. I mainly do a lot of writing and focus on mostly conservative issues, along with a lot of economic issues. So when you mention cycles and how do you warn people that may not have an understanding, not due to any fault of their own. Sometimes it can get frustrating, but a lot of these things aren't taught. And that can kind of get to maybe the second tier of our conversation, why some of these things are withheld from the public. In my situation, I'm trying to figure out how do I warn people of this, for lack of a better word, a global reset in the global economic scheme. Right now, we're living in the largest asset bubble in human history that is in dire search of a pin to go pop. But unfortunately, because of the way our education system is set up, people just have no idea what's coming. So when you ask, how would you warn people to prevent mass hysteria, I could go for a little mass hysteria at this point. I want to get some people's blood pumping, but you've got a woefully dishonest political establishment. Likewise goes for media that everybody accepts as dishonest when it comes to all things political, but for some reason they cafeteria. Well, of course they're being honest about the economy stuff, though, right? No. And in your case, course they're being honest about the climate stuff, right? No. So I really don't know. But that's really what it all comes down to, is there are cycles. And unfortunately, we are coming up on a big can of ass whooping. No matter what side of the globe you live on, whether it be climatically or economically or socially, all of the above.
Yeah, there's a giant move right now to dissuade you from looking at all of this information that people like myself put out. And for those of you really trying to get information on the climatic changes, I encourage you to visit iceagenow.info. That's Robert Felix's site. He wrote the book Not by Fire, but by Ice. Jump over to sot.net. They have a full wrap-up daily. Adorelli, the Watchers, they also follow all of these different kinds of anomalous news, including volcanic eruptions, bird migrations out of place. Magneticreversal.org, Ben Davidson's site. It follows the track and the changes of the magnetic pole, not the physical pole, but the magnetic pole that's moving about 80 miles per year toward Kamchatka, Russia. There's an enormous amount of information out there, and these fake news sites that are coming out, the mainstream media is really trying to dissuade you, because that CO2, that whole story is starting to fall apart right now. Now, if I was in advance, give me 30 years, and if I knew the weather was going to change in 30 years, I wouldn't tell you, because you would panic and pull all of your money out of the banks. You would quit your jobs. You would fight for tools in the store in those last couple of days of the paychecks of the month while you waited. There would be chaos before the actual event happened. Plus, they don't want everybody to survive through this. That's just plain and simple. You're not going to want people to migrate around the planet either, so there's going to be a giant economic collapse put in place, because look what's happening across the planet right now with just migrations of people that are only literally in the tens of millions of people. And going through the news outlets, you see the problems that are created by that. Now multiply that by 100, and you're still only into the hundreds of millions of people. You're not even into a billion people yet. But if history repeats itself, and if you go back to the 1600s and the Monter Minimum, and you go back to the Wolf Minimum in the 1300s, and you go back to the collapse of the Roman Empire, and all the Chinese dynasty collapses, there's going to be billions of people migrating across this planet in search of food, in search of areas they can live in search of employment, because agriculture is going to be absolutely destroyed and crushed anywhere 45 north and above. So I could already see the chaos that would ensue, so you would not be telling people. That would create a huge panic before the fact.
So I understand what you're saying, and it's not a whole lot different in the things that I'm trying to warn my viewers about as it relates to the economy. But let's see what common denominators we see in some of the activity that's going on. You mentioned a lot of people migrating, and we know that George Soros has taken responsibility for largely funding the refugee crisis that has now overrun Europe. Almost by design. Well, not almost by design. Phase one is like this slow burn of global society, because it's not just limited to the United States. As obviously everything you just said goes as it relates to the climate, but likewise goes for the economy. I keep preaching that once the global economy goes, there's nowhere to run. And you're either going to be the hunted or the hunter. So you can begin preparing now if you're one of those people who's lucky enough to still have an income, because if you, what's the common thread here? In both situations is the dishonesty and the lack of full disclosure on the part of those in charge. And I guess we could debate who those in charge are. Thoughts on that?